We saw what close looked like in 2022 when Lane flirted with Auburn, but this looks nothing like that. I'm going to explain.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's show, we'll tell you exactly what you need to be watching for in Saturday's matchup between the South Carolina Gamecocks and the Ole Miss Rebels in this so important football game. We'll talk about why the energy of Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, it needs to be elevated. The atmosphere on campus, the keys to the victory for Ole Miss, which you might expect begin with containing Lanorris Sellers. We'll talk all about that as well. But first, we'll dive into why this season feels a little different. The outside noise might be trying to distract you, but what your eyes are telling you is something completely different from what they're saying. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Listen, we saw what close looked like. Lane Kiffin almost went to Auburn. There's no denying that. We all saw the documentary. Everybody knows at least that version of the story. There might be some extra stuff out there as well. But the point is, Lane was close to going. He seriously considered heading that way. And it makes sense, okay? Ole Miss was 7-1, just like they are right now, by the way. They dropped a heartbreaker against Alabama and essentially eliminated themselves from the 14 playoff. Once that happened, things went off the rails. That's when all the flirtation started to happen. That's when Lane started trolling his own fan base. That's when everything went down. But eventually, Lane Kiffin chose to stay in Oxford, Mississippi and at Ole Miss, which basically means he probably has no shot of ever getting the Auburn job again. But that's the way that was. And that's what it looked like. Lane trolling the Ole Miss fan base, making fun of what Ole Miss didn't have at the moment. Remember the leaky ceiling thing? All of that stuff. Now, we can all talk about how Lane has grown up over the last 3 or 4 years or something like that. But I think it's a little bit more than just that. In 2022, it was basically just Lane, and Landry had just moved into town. And that was the only family really that Lane Kiffin had. Since then, everybody is in Oxford, okay? There's no way that can be discounted. That's the place where Lane's parents died. Both his mom and his father. There have been roots that have been developed all around that town. His son plays high school football at Oxford High. Landry is at Ole Miss, and all of that stuff being a father that you heard about in the documentary. And that whole scenario back in Auburn looked completely different than this one does. And a lot of it has to do with that family unit being in town. But the other thing is, this is a locked-in Lane Kiffin. There's not a distraction at all. That Oklahoma game, there was 100 million opportunities for the Florida noise to drown out what Ole Miss is doing on the road after you lost at Georgia against Oklahoma in Norman, to where the season just kind of falls apart, kind of a redo of 2022, if you will. That didn't happen. You saw a coach and a staff and a team that is completely locked in. Literally all Lane is thinking about right now is Ole Miss in this playoff run. How to defeat the South Carolina Gamecocks. How to handle the Citadel Bulldogs, I guess. How to beat the Florida Gators. How to win the Egg. How to win these last 4 games. I talked yesterday about how this is the November you will remember for the rest of your life. This one, the one that all Ole Miss fans have been waiting for, it's here. It's a real thing. Now it's up to this team to go win those games. It's up to the crowd to make the atmosphere just crazy. The school to embrace what's going on. This run is the most important thing. Lane Kiffin is locked in, all in on this run because he knows he is a missed tackle on a 4th and 2 away from being 8-0 right now and probably number 3 in the country. He knows that this is a national championship capable team. Does it have flaws? Yes. Does every team have flaws? Yes. Lane Kiffin knows all of that. So this is the only thing on his mind. Listen, that's horrible news for Florida and LSU. If they think they can just go write a check and Lane Kiffin would immediately pounce on it. Maybe Bobby P and leave at the end of the season before the playoffs and all of that. They would be sadly mistaken. Lane Kiffin is completely all in on this playoff run. All he is thinking about is the South Carolina Gamecocks, how to contain Lanorris Sellers, how to score on that defense, how to block Dylan Stewart. That is the only thing on his mind. Nothing to do with the Florida Gators. Nothing to do with the LSU Tigers. And it doesn't matter how much money they have, how much influence they have, how much of a blue blood they have traditionally been. It just doesn't matter. All that Lane Kiffin is thinking about is this playoff run, which leads to some interesting questions that you saw from the sports books where you can bet on this hiring. Lane Kiffin, who was the predetermined number 1 on both of their boards, is now hovering around 3 or 4. Other candidates have popped in as the most likely scenario with the lowest betting odds on it. And that is because of this. The people that are in charge of coming up with the odds of who is going to be the next coach somewhere sees what's happening in Oxford. And let's not underestimate the fact that Lane Kiffin likely has a $13.5 million contract waiting to sign as soon as the season ends. Because the funny thing is, everybody says, well, why hasn't he signed it right now? Lane Kiffin doesn't do that. It's kind of like Bane in Batman, the last Batman movie with Christian Bale, where he says, you just lived in the dark. I was born in it. This is all going to the script. Ole Miss fans should know that you're not going to see anything during the season because he doesn't do anything in the season. Everybody else is going to take it as signs and start wish casting. And that is another thing that you're seeing from the LSU fans and the Florida fans. They are the group that is trying to read in to everything that is going on. It's not the Ole Miss people. Ole Miss people are excited about this playoff run. This is a big moment for Ole Miss. And when Lane Kiffin talks about the atmosphere in the stadium, that's no different than Kirby Smart saying the same thing about the Ole Miss Rebels when they came in. Lane Kiffin knows how important this month is for Ole Miss. Doesn't matter at all for the coaching search. Nobody even cares about the coaching search right now except for hardcore fans that are worried about the future and hypotheticals. The ones that have their eyes open knows how important this month is. Listen, we had Daquan Wright on the show yesterday, and he said, point blank, the next 30 days, there are no days off. You cannot have a bad day for the next 30 days. You have to practice hard. You have to play well, all of that stuff. That is the pressure that they are putting on themselves internally in that locker room. They understand the moment, which means Lane understands the moment, which means if Ole Miss makes it to the playoffs and all of these games start happening by the 3rd week in December, and if you win that, you play on New Year's Day, who's going to wait to hire a coach to right before the transfer portal window opens up? That's not going to happen. What you're going to see, especially with the rise of Mike Elko, Mike Elko has made this philosophy a little bit more tenable, is go find your Mike Elko and build up. Take a big job and try and build up because anybody can do it there, right? That's what we've been hearing for the last 2 weeks. Anybody can do it. Not that big of a deal. All the resources, everything, never mind the fact that they just don't seem to get done and people will get turned over pretty quickly. But hey, we'll keep going as well. But with the playoff run, with the winning in November, with Lane Kiffin being locked in. Do you see what I'm getting at here? With Lane Kiffin being as locked in as he is, with what a playoff run could mean, that should tell you everything that you need to know about this job. He's not focused even a little bit on anything that is outside the Manning Center right now. And that's a good thing. That should have every Ole Miss fan excited going into the South Carolina game. I know I, for one, am. Anyway, rarely do you see one player mean as much to his team as Lanorris Sellers does for South Carolina. And he'll be a massive key for Ole Miss stopping and moving to 8-1 come Saturday. Sellers' playmaking ability and decision-making could decide whether South Carolina can hang around or if Ole Miss pulls away early. The Rebels' defense will have to stay disciplined, contain his mobility, and force him into some quick reads. We'll break down how Sellers impacts this matchup, what Ole Miss needs to do to limit him, and why his performance could define the game, honestly, for both teams, right after this. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all of the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make every day drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we can sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible kind of becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Locked On is getting ready to change the game yet again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It's coming in December. You don't want to miss that. We'll let you know as it gets closer. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. Now, one thing's interesting. When you start looking at the keys to this game, it's actually a very simple game. It's stop Lanorris Sellers and you likely win the game. If Lanorris Sellers is allowed to go off, you're going to have a struggle bus game, period. But South Carolina, as an offense, I don't think they've gone over 350 yards all season. They're 1-5 in the SEC. I think their only win is against Kentucky, maybe. Maybe they beat the Kentucky Wildcats. That's what they got. So this South Carolina team is not as good as last season's South Carolina team. They still have some weapons. They have Lanorris Sellers. They have Dylan Stewart. They have Nick Harbor. Those guys that can make you hurt. So it's not going to be just roll the ball out there and get the win. You need to go beat these guys, fair and square. And theoretically, that could work. Missouri ran the ball up and down the field on South Carolina, and South Carolina's inability to run the ball, that's been the story of their season thus far. Mike Shula is the offensive coordinator at South Carolina. We like to poke fun of that because of all of the Alabama stuff, but they haven't figured out how to use Lanorris Sellers to this point yet. Now, that could change in Oxford, but it could also be too little too late. And I'm not expecting the most sharp South Carolina team to come into town with the way they lost against the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were in that game, were about to win that game, and they completely just peed down their leg. It was absolutely unreal. So the keys to this game: tackle Lanorris Sellers. He is the best in the SEC of keeping dead plays alive and making them work, because he is such a good athlete and hard to bring down. He has Nick Harbor on the outside, who has track speed at 240 pounds. You have some weapons that you can count on, and they can hurt you. Don't let them have the explosives. If you can keep them contained and tackle Lanorris Sellers well, you are going to be all right in this game. Because honestly, watching the first 8 games of the season, he is their offense. It's everything. It revolves around Lanorris Sellers. You want them to play well, he usually has a good game when that happens. Whenever he plays poorly, they have a bad game when it happens. So we'll see about that, but tackle Lanorris Sellers. Also play with energy and the desperation of knowing what's exactly at stake for Ole Miss. And what I mean by that is understand the situation, know the role, know what is happening. If you win 4 games in November, you know you can't overlook anybody, and poor Citadel when it comes to that. But if you go every single day for a month and go 4-0, all of your dreams could come true in games that you should win. It is all on you to pack your own energy. It is all on you to make the plays, to do the film study, to practice hard. The crowd is going to be on them to make noise and be rowdy for 30 days. That is what is at stake for Ole Miss. If Ole Miss wins these next 4 games, you are at a minimum going to host a playoff game in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. At a minimum, going to host the biggest football game that the state of Mississippi has ever seen just by winning these games. So you have to lock in. You have to play with that desperation. You have to understand the situation. If you do, and everything goes right, you have the talent to win these games. You're going to be double-digit favorite in each and every one. But getting upset, we all saw what happened last year between Ole Miss and Kentucky. We all witnessed that. We saw what happened last year between Ole Miss and Florida. We all witnessed that. Ole Miss has to guard against that. And honestly, I think Ole Miss is in a better position to do that with Trinidad Chambliss as quarterback, if that makes sense at all. I'm a huge Jackson Dart guy. I was basically his hype man for 3 years on here. But seemed like there was not a plan B. With Trinidad, there's a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E, all of that. And he just performed at an extremely high level, and he's exactly what this Ole Miss offense needed. That desperation, that knowledge that somebody sitting in the huddle in Trinidad Chambliss, who has gone through this before, is going to help the Ole Miss Rebels. And last of all, you need to play a clean game, okay? Force South Carolina to drive the length of the field. No short fields. Ole Miss decided to get cute against Oklahoma and go for a 4th down on their own 25-yard line and didn't get it because of the conditions. There's always slipping as a possibility. Oklahoma was able to get the ball. They didn't score a touchdown, but it started a run. That's the reason you get pissed off about these go for it on short fields in your own territory and don't get it, because of the momentum swing that comes with it. Oklahoma kicked a field goal there, got a 3-and-out, scored a touchdown, got a 3-and-out, scored a touchdown. They were ahead in the start of the 4th quarter or something like that. All because you decided to get cute. Don't get cute. Make them drive the field to score. No short fields, and, of course, play a clean game. Watch your penalties. Watch your turnovers. If that can happen, you're going to be all right. It's going to be a fun game. I'm excited to where this game could go. And if Ole Miss wins this game, which they should because they're a 12.5-point favorite right now, they'll be 8-1 with the Citadel next week. That's likely 9-1, still on the team to show up. And then you have the last revenge game. And it is a real revenge game. We had Daquan Wright on the show last night, and he mentioned that, of course, Kentucky, LSU, and Florida were circled in the preseason as a game that means something. So the extra motivation is there for that game. Florida has a new coach. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like for them. We will see. In Mississippi State, who knows? That Texas game actually hurt me to see happen. So who knows what Mississippi State's going to look like after they play Missouri and after they play Georgia. I mean, there's a legit chance to where they lose out and they pull an 0-8 in the SEC again. It's weird that they beat Arizona State, by the way. Yeah, that's kind of funny that they've lost 20 straight SEC games, but they beat Arizona State. So really interesting. Jeff Levy does have a team that is better, but kind of is what it is. Now, In our final segment, so many great things are sitting at the feet of this Ole Miss team. Opportunity, momentum, and a path towards something special, but standing in the way is a South Carolina team that would love nothing more than to play spoiler. With Lanorris Sellers at the helm, Shane Beamer pulling every motivational level possible, this will not come easy. We tell you what to watch for on Saturday, who needs to step up, and how Ole Miss can keep its dream alive into November, coming up next. You know, Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It is their most advanced equipment yet, designed to save you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how Peloton IQ system, they offer real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps. It suggests the right weights. It corrects even your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen kind of is a game changer too. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without ever missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get the workout tailored to your vibe and energy level each and every single week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. South Carolina is coming into town. It's going to be a potentially rough game. I don't know exactly what to expect because of the way the game against Alabama went. Are you going to have a completely flat South Carolina team that just completely let go of the rope? Are you going to get to see Shane Beamer lift them up a little bit? Or is he even checked out and looking at the Virginia Tech job? I'm just not 100% sure of what we're going to see from the South Carolina Gamecocks. And that's not necessarily a bad thing or a diss. It's just that you don't know. If you look at what's happened in their season thus far, it's kind of Jekyll and Hyde and confusing. They played pretty well in Missouri, but they got absolutely boat raced by Vanderbilt. It's going to be imperative on the Ole Miss defense to tackle well. It's going to be imperative on the Ole Miss offense to get off to a good start. So what are we watching for in this game? I think the most important thing over the next month is going to be a great start, especially against South Carolina. If you are going against a team that had a struggle bus game against Alabama just a week ago, it's important to get out and front run them a little bit. You want to encourage them letting go of the rope because they are almost there. Their season's over. They're limping to the finish line. It's going to be so important over this game and the remainder of the month to be a front runner. You do not want these teams to get hope. Whenever they get hope, you're in for a little bit of a dogfight and they could stay in there. But if you get up by 2 scores in the first or second quarter, you might see a team let go of the rope and it gets a little bit out of hand. You're able to play your backups and you end up moving to the next game. Remember, winning against South Carolina, winning against Florida, winning against Mississippi State, winning against the Citadel, that is the most important thing. Next up, Chambliss needs to use all of his weapons in this game, and the tight end are always going to be a key weapon against the South Carolina Gamecocks. They like to get after the passer, use the aggressiveness that Ole Miss is known for a little bit against the South Carolina Gamecocks. If you can take advantage of that defense, which Ole Miss did a year ago, that was a Juice Wells fumble through the end zone for a touchback, and it dropped Juice Wells' pass from being a 41-3 game or something like that. And if Ole Miss played South Carolina for 8 quarters, the Gamecocks were not going to score a touchdown in that game. They just weren't. Now, this is a different defense. It looks a little bit different, but what South Carolina does well, Ole Miss does well. What South Carolina does poorly, Ole Miss does poorly. It's kind of a carbon copy of what the Oklahoma Sooners had just a week before. So Oklahoma beat South Carolina the week before Ole Miss beat them, by the way, by several scores. And Shane Beamer, for better or worse, is one of the most, I don't know, emotionally immature, mentally weak, something like that coaches in college football. You can goad him into basically fake punts. You can goad him into flipping out on the sidelines to where he just loses the plot. It's happened in multiple games. I don't know. Last year it was the faking injuries thing. I don't think that'll be a necessary thing this year. But if there's a way to kind of get under Shane's skin, Lane knows how to do it. He knows how to play the psychological games in a football game. I expect that every time that the South Carolina wants to go tempo and they have an opportunity with the sub, they're going to do the same thing that Brett Bielema did in the Citrus Bowl a year ago. That was one of those frustrating games for Shane Beamer. This Ole Miss team, though, and last year's Ole Miss team, a little bit different, a lot different weapons. They are a hard offense to stop. If Ole Miss can play relatively well on defense and tackle Lanorris Sellers, they're going to win this football game. And also play with an Ole Miss versus everybody mindset, because everybody outside of Ole Miss wants you to fail. They do not want you to make the playoffs. You're little old Ole Miss. You do not know your place. The fact that you're going for your fourth 10-win season in 5 years is a slap upon the face of humanity. Play with the chip in your shoulder. Know that everybody wants you to fail. Prove them wrong. If you do that, if that happens, you're likely going to win this football game and potentially going away. And also, if Lanorris Sellers throws you the football, catch it. I think Ole Miss has had trouble with interceptions this season. They had a shot at 3 or 4 against Arkansas that would have completely changed the complexion of that game. If a ball hits you in the hands, catch it. You need to make the plays that are in front of you for nothing else than to get used to doing that before the playoffs start. So thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss podcast and see how much we come up. We're like 80% of that page. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps the show. It's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship to every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.